good morning. My name is Reverend Veronica Vias. I'm a little out of shape. And I didn't dance as hard as some of you. I am grateful that Reverend Lee invited me to speak today as he is at his Vipassana retreat. So I get to start the new year with you, so Happy New Year. I have a focus ministry, Sacred Living. I teach mindfulness to children, but it's always an honor and privilege to come to Agape. And so as I catch my breath, let's take a breath together. Breathe in and breathe out, anchoring in this joy and anchoring in this moment. So when Reverend Lee called me, I always ask him, what would you like me to speak about? And he pauses and he goes, conscious gratitude. I thought, perfect. What a way to start the year in gratitude. Because oftentimes we look at the year that we just experienced and we tend to focus on maybe the challenges and the hardships, which we'll talk a little bit about today. Because conscious gratitude is that place of leaning into the moment with full, wholehearted, open awareness of the presence of God, no matter what's happening. And so it's interesting how, Facebook has divine timing, that one of my kids from Bales Elementary, so I used to teach at several elementary schools. I'm at Hexter Elementary primarily now. But this school, these children experience a lot of trauma, a lot of poverty, a lot of hardship. And you often wonder, how do we cultivate gratitude in a harsh reality like that? And so it was Mrs. Muntz's class. It was third grade. This was about 2 years ago. And we sat in a circle. And I always have us put like our shoes in the middle and we sit in a circle. I go, if anything, we can be grateful for the shoes that we have. We can be grateful for the shirt that we're wearing. Let's just break it down to the basics, to something simple. And I didn't, this came up on Facebook, so I don't have the student's name, but then I had them write their experience of gratitude because we sat in a circle and you could feel the energy shifting. It was palpable, redirecting them from, the hardships that they experience day to day. And this is what this student wrote. When I feel gratitude, my heart starts to feel like it was in a happy, quiet place. When the world was quiet and the birds were singing a little song to my heart, and singing to the world and to my soul. So I'm going to read that one more time, even though it had some misspellings, but I'll read it correctly. Third grade, all right? When I feel gratitude, my heart starts to feel like it was in a quiet place when the world was quiet, and the birds were singing a little song to my heart, and singing to the world and to my soul. For me, that's the perfect embodiment of conscious gratitude. That how in the midst of what I'm going to talk about, the grit and grace of our lives, can we stand in conscious gratitude? We've learned to cultivate the attitude of gratitude, and Oprah Winfrey was phenomenal in bringing that to the forefront. List the things that we're grateful for. I wake up in the morning with a gratitude practice. For those who don't know me, in my 30s, I experienced a long-term illness. I was seriously, severely ill for 10 years that I could not work. I went from working in the film industry to being incapacitated, and at 34, came back to Dallas. And that unfolded into an amazing journey of awakening, one, into wholeness, two, my, time with my nieces and nephews, and then 3, it took me into ministry, nonprofit, and teaching children mindfulness. But had you told me in my 30s, because I'm 56, that you will find gratitude through this process, I would not have believed you. All right? So my day does start in gratitude. But the gratitude that I'm talking about is the cultivation of awareness and consciousness. Peter Bolin, and I found this on Unity, he says the consciousness of gratitude is that deep and abiding feeling of aliveness, well-being, serenity, and joy. And it's a singular pleasure that transcends thought and circumstance. So think of a time in your life when things were not going right. Things were like bottoming out. Me in my 30s, sick, wondering what's going on in my life. And then all of a sudden you have a glimpse of something that shifts you into a different reality, that shifts you into the timelessness of the divine presence. For me, I'll never forget it. I was digging up weeds in my backyard in Valencia, California, north of Los Angeles. And I'm crying because I'm in my 30s and I don't know what's going on. And I was working in the film industry. And all of a sudden at the edge of my peripheral vision was a marmalade sunset that was literally being painted for me. And in that moment, my awareness shifted completely to that present moment. And that feeling of conscious gratitude was alive in me in that moment. All right, yeah, this sucks. Yes, I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, little did I know I could talk to my 56-year-old self and say, it's going to be all right. But in that moment, I felt a deep aliveness this penetrating presence of the divine reality, this serenity that it's going to be all right, even though it doesn't feel all right in the moment. And so conscious gratitude is that frequency, is that feeling tone that we cultivate through those moments of the presence, through our spiritual practice. It is a difference between being stuck in the conditions, which we always do count our blessings. I want to be grateful for what I do have, but the conscious gratitude is an awareness that no matter what is happening, the divine presence that I call God is alive in me right now, is alive as all of life right now, is revealing to me everything that I need to know. And if I can just bring myself into this moment, I can shift from that spiraling energy, from that fear, from that chaos, from those thoughts of lack and limitation, and move into the awareness of the presence of God that is infinite, that formless, that becomes form by our every thought and our every choice. So that's the feeling of the consciousness of gratitude. That's the feeling tone that no matter what is happening, there is something deep within me that cannot be destroyed, that cannot be, hurt. That infinite presence that's my life is that touchstone of the awareness of the infinite presence that I call God. And that aliveness in the moment is the gratitude that this is not good, but something good will come from it. So with conscious gratitude, we want to first be in the feeling tone. Cultivating that awareness, cultivating those moments of aliveness, feeling that serenity despite the condition. And it is a practice, because I'd like to remind you, we are human, all right? Oftentimes when you thought it's like, it's all good. Yes, it is all good, and yet we have our human moments of suffering, and we must bear witness to that. But with a consciousness of gratitude and to be consciously grateful, we can know that something good will come of this. But in the moment, I'm standing in the midst of my experience, but I'm calling forth love and joy. Now, the part that's challenging is that unconditional part. Peter Wright says, when you practice acceptance of what is, when we awaken to the infinite formlessness of the now, gratitude seeps up through the gaps between our thoughts like groundwater. And he's talking about surrendering the ego. And the ego does not like to be surrendered. That's that part of our psyche that's so necessary to be in this human experience, because I don't want to denigrate the ego, but the ego can't lead the show. It's the ego that gets stuck in the past. It's the ego that's always forecasting the future, but it's the ego that sometimes keeps us right here, out of right here, this present moment. And surrendering to the ego is when we have to just let go, let God, and let be in that moment. So for me, and I'm just wondering how many of you had the experience of 2019 as almost the year of the sacred paradox. Anybody where you had great success, great joy, and at the same time, you felt like there's a little roto-rooter happening in your life? Things were getting unplugged, all right, unclogged. All right, so that was me. I had a year of great success, if you want to look at it from in terms of my ministry, serving children, teaching mindfulness, fundraising, which is always, an ongoing process. I won Volunteer of the Year, which I don't do it for that, but that gave me some visibility in the Dallas Independent School District to continue the work that I'm doing, to be the servant leader for our students, to expand education in a healthy way. And then, starting in the fall, and I won't get into the details, I actually met my beloved. And then, as we were getting ready to move forward and there was complications in our life that needed to be tended to, the door was shut. At 56, waiting my whole life for the one was life-shattering, all right, because it was mutual. And it was one of those moments where that conscious gratitude had to come in. Because living in that sacred paradox, which all of a sudden there's this great love, there's this great joy, there's this great happening, and then the grief that arose in me is something that I've never experienced. And mind you, I experienced 10 years being ill, deathly ill. And so my spiritual practice was my touchstone of truth. When I could navigate the grief and the emotions and the not understanding, yet at the same time being an unconditional loving presence to her, it was a phenomenal experience that still continues to this day. But in the last couple of months, the way that it unconditionally arose for me, the gratitude, was that I would have these moments, almost like being at a retreat, but I didn't want to meditate. I didn't want to read. I didn't want to be on social media. I didn't want to watch Netflix. I wasn't in depression. I just needed to be. I just needed to be with the feelings, with the awareness of the aliveness, with the pain, with the sorrow, with the joy, with the gratitude. And I would literally just sit on my little emerald green little sofa that I got at Second Chance Treasures, and I would look out the window, and I simply would be. There was nothing else I could do with it. I couldn't argue with it. I couldn't change it in the moment. And this gratitude arose in me that was so palpable. And the presence of God lifted me in that moment. And so instead of bypassing those negative emotions, I unconditionally allowed that gratitude to be present. Even though it was the most challenging circumstance, I don't know how it's going to unfold. I take it moment by moment, day by day. And it's still, sometimes my ego does want to argue with the reality. But the unconditional part of me of the gratitude is like, but I'm alive. And I'm awake. And I'm aware. And I love her. And she loves me. But it's not happening right now. And I have things to do in this world. I have children to teach. I have nieces and nephews to love. I have a life that needs to continue to expand and unfold. And that grief has been my greatest teacher of conscious gratitude. How do you stay present in painful experiences, loss of a relationship, loss of loved ones? So many times, just in the last 2 weeks, so many friends of mine have lost somebody unexpectedly. How do you find gratitude in the dark night of the soul? It's a practice. And so instead of bypassing it, we stand in that unconditional awareness that the power of God is far more powerful than my life, which is an experience of that one power. That I allow myself, because conscious gratitude is about allowing, not achieving. It's about being, not doing. It's about being present to what is available to you in this moment. And despite any condition or experience, nothing can take away from that palpable presence of the divine that I feel in every moment. And so when I surrender my ego, then it allows me to be in that expansive place of the now, the holy now. Gratitude is in this moment, this breath, this thought, this choice. And then when we have that, the wrestling with our ego, we allow it, all right? I'm not going to argue with trying to stay in this it's all good. No, when I was sick in my 30s, no, that wasn't good. It was awful. It was fearful. It was frightening. I had no idea what my future would be. No idea. But there was something deep within me in those moments when that marmalade sunset would happen. Or when I would come home and the laughter of my nieces and nephews would bring me clear into this present moment. That aliveness then rose up in me to be fully engaged and fully present. So with conscious gratitude, we want to be aware of what is available to us now. Like that child, to hear the song of the bird. To imagine your heart and your soul being sung to by the divine. To look at the generosity that life does offer us. Despite maybe it's unanswered prayer, or it's just not now, or it's not available. To not wrestle with that, but be present to that. To allow the grit and the grace. So for me, gratitude and conscious gratitude is that grit. It is those challenging moments, the hardships, the what? What the F? Those moments of God, really? You and I need to have a serious conversation. Oh, Holy One. I've had those talks. Divine Mother, Divine Father, Divine Mother. I'm human. I have to allow it to unfold, and then I move into answered prayer, But the point is that in being genuine and authentic to my human experience, I allow that to be there. But it's a gratitude that's my touchstone of truth. It's a gratitude with the grit, then the grace of the moment that fills me deeply. It's a remembering that I am loved, I am supported, I am this expression of the Holy One, but life around me continues to show up. So I had this fourth grader, Cody, and I'm probably going to misquote it. I put it on Instagram. So I was having a really hard time, and then I had changes at work. All right, so this happened in February, and then I had changes at work in September. All right, so my primary principal took a job that's closer to her house in Fort Worth. And so here I'm maintaining all the energy of this school. So here I've got this going on in February, and then all this, and I went to Italy for the summer, and that was fabulous. And then we get to school, and we think we've got one more year with our principal, and then she takes this job, and that was a divine appointment, how that unfolded. So I'm dealing with the grief of everyone here. And yet at the same time, teacher after teacher would say, you know what, that's the best thing for her. I'm so grateful, even though I'm in grief. Conscious gratitude that we named the good despite all that we were feeling. But this one day, when I was having my own personal grief moment, I walked into my mindfulness room. I'd gone to San Marcos to pick up my nephew Vincent to bring him back because he was going to go to Denmark for a week to see his girlfriend who was over there. And I came back to school, and the kids, I'm like favorite aunt. All right, I'm in there with the kids. I'm on the floor. We're sitting on the floor doing our mindfulness. They see me every day. I connect with them. I'm there to listen to their sorrows and their heartaches and their fears and transmute that anxiety. I'm there. So when I'm not there, after having our principal leave and our assistant principal leave, it creates, a bit of like, hey, where'd you go, all right? So I come in, though, after the trip of picking up Vincent, and there's a note, and I'm having that personal grief. It's like, really? Okay, all right, I'm just feeling it in the moment, all right? And this little boy left me a note, Cody Fitton, in 4th grade, and he goes, Miss Veronica, love is everywhere if you know where to find it. And I wept. And in that moment, the most profound gratitude arose. That the innocence of a child could bless me in that moment. And that was a moment of conscious gratitude. That I am always loved and supported. That I can accept in the moment what is. That I can feel that feeling tone and that frequency of gratitude, and yet at the same time be in the grit and allow and make space for the grace. And then to know that in this holy now is where I experience the presence of God. And this holy now is where gratitude can consciously arise. And in cultivating that consciousness of counting my blessings before they even arrive, but the presence of God, my life, the possibilities, to be able just, to turn on the light switch, all right? To have electricity, to have running water, to have a family that loves me, to be by White Rock Lake. I'll get up early and I'll ride in the morning, and all of a sudden I can hear like the hoot, hoot of an owl. And then the edge of sunrise begins to come up through my window. It's like this pink flamingo sunrise. To have those moments of consciousness is what conscious gratitude is. To be awake, to be aware, to be alive. So oftentimes we forget that the light of the God consciousness that is expressing is that place of gratitude, is that awareness that we cultivate through our spiritual practice, is why we take the classes, we do the work, we allow ourselves to clear the lens so we can see clearly, that we can be in whatever suffering has happened, and yet at the same time, we know that we live in a kind and loving and generous universe, and that my life is always completely supported.
I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask that you go to our website, agapecsl.com. Once there, click on the donate button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. Or if you would like, text your gift by simply dialing 972-532-6976. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to you in the world. I would ask that if you like this message, to please subscribe to my YouTube channel under my name, Lee Wallach. Again, I want to thank you for joining me in the Agape community as we learn how to better self-love through conscious living.